between L&D and recruiting, the need for it to be more aligned is just getting more and more important. As it's harder than ever to hire tech talent, especially, you've got to grow your own, but you've also got to grow the talent pipeline. You've got to get them upskilled. So, that happens to fit in line with everything I do and what I believe in anyway, which is about, you share useful, relevant content with people, you generate goodwill in return. So, that's the best way to generosity is the currency of engagement. Spamming people with job descriptions isn't. So if you're giving them useful, relevant things, and you're also able to upskill your own talent pipeline at the same time, whether it's internal or external, I think companies need to stop thinking about their employees versus people outside the business, and just start thinking of everybody they might hire as one cohesive talent pipeline that they should be nurturing.
Absolutely.
That was the big thing I got from the event. But I've never seen anything like that party. It was like rock. There was like bands. There was dancing stormtroopers. I got a photo of myself being executed by Joker. It was.
I can't believe I missed this.
It was in the cinema, the Troxy, over kind of Whitechapel area.
Really? I mean, it was one of these where I thought, right, do I turn up or not? Because I did get an invite. And I had loads of things to do, and I just ended up doing busy stuff. But I blatantly should have turned up because the party looked amazing. And they put on a good spread. And actually, I did learn a lot. Same with you. I learned a lot about what Cornerstone on Demand was all about. And I didn't realize actually they were as dominant in the L&D space as they were, but also that they were interested in the recruiting side as well, which is something they're going to progress with. So very exciting sort of situation there. Anyway, we are live. So welcome everybody to Brainfood Live on Air. This is episode 38. I'm delighted to be here. My name is Hung Lee. I'm the curator of recruiting Brainfood. And we do this show every Friday. Basically to recruit Brainfood topics and also talk about do a bit of a deep dive on a topic of interest every week with some awesome guests. And I'm joined every week by my co-pilot and chief promoter, and Adam Gordon. Adam, how are you doing, sir?
Yep, good, thank you. As if anybody was here early, they'd have heard me saying I spent a couple of days at Cornerstone's Convergence event in London this week, which we missed each other. You were there on the Monday, I was there on the Tuesday, Wednesday. It was an absolutely incredible event. Anybody in talent acquisition, I think you can get a free invite to it next year. Go to it. It was great. And the link between, as I was just saying, the link between talent acquisition and learning and development it's more and more imperative that is cohesive, and that you're nurturing your talent pipelines in the same way with L&D content, in the same way that you're nurturing your internal people.
Yeah, I mean, I think Cornerstone probably didn't set off strategically with have combined, if you like, those types of disciplines, but they may well have kind of found themselves in a perfect position, because it seems that the trends have kind of aligned with how they've built their products, and it's very promising to see how their future really goes. So anyway, quick shout out to Cornerstone on Demand. Great to invite me at least to the Monday. I knew I probably had an invite for Tuesday or Wednesday as well, but fantastic event. I'd love to attend again next year. Anyway, we're talking about recruiting Brainfood, Adam. So tell us firstly, did you read it, and what was interesting for you if you did?
So, okay, I've got to respond on one thing, which is you always ask if I read it. And I think there's been twice this year that I've had to fess up at the beginning and go, I didn't have time to go into it in much detail, which meant I didn't read it. Every 50 out of 52 weeks this year, I've gone into it in detail.
Are you offended by me asking that question? If you are, I'll stop asking.
It's like an inoculation. You're bracing yourself for me about to say.
I know. I just want to know whether I need to ad lib. Given if you haven't actually read it, but I've offended you, so I don't want to do that. Right. So I apologize, and I'll remove it in future. What was interesting?
Let's get into it. So the first one is what could well be the very start of like Facebook at work, and Microsoft Teams and Slack and all that sort of thing, was Amazon's internal decision apparently by Jeff Bezos to go, from now on, all communication between us is publicly available and everybody can see what we're all saying to each other. And that was an absolutely brilliant decision. And I've got no idea why it took till 98 or something before anybody ever really did that. But I thought that was a really interesting article and a good analysis of Amazon's internal, sort of early internal culture and why they decided to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was a brilliant article. I'd really recommend everyone read it. I've just shared the link on the chat stream there. And basically, the title of the article is the sort of important email ever sent or something. But basically, an internal email by Jeff Bezos, 8 bullet points. One of the bullet points was, if anybody who doesn't do this is fired, which I thought was, classic non-PC management at the time. But the central concept was that you had to. He wanted everyone to build in a way that opened up information transfer within the business, and also opened up Amazon to interface with their ecosystem. So you can start seeing people start calling Amazon an ecosystem business, and you can see the kernel of that with that email. They weren't just launching a product or a number of products. They understood they needed to be the glue around an entire kind of suite of, even an entire mini industry, really. And I think it's one of the messages that he's promoted that's really put Amazon where they are. And we know Amazon, there's controversy as to where they're at. A lot of people have issues with the business and all the rest of it. But I think all of us could be united at least to recognize the achievement that he's made in positioning a bookseller, really. Literally that was what the thing was, selling books to perhaps the most dominant business on the planet. I don't know. But yeah, really, really interesting read. Anybody interested in communication, culture, company kind of organization, that kind of stuff should really read and click on that link that I shared.
Well, I mean, there's no end of information about Amazon's culture, because we've also just had in the last few days notification that people are getting fired by algorithm at Amazon based on their productivity.
That's old news, I reckon. I saw it shared in the Brainfood sort of Facebook group, and I commented on that as well. I'd recommend everyone join that, by the way. If you want to get involved in dialogue during the week, you can join the Recruit Brainfood Facebook group. Just answer the questions, please. Loads of people are complaining they're not in, but you've got to answer the questions, otherwise you're not in. But anyway, and it was all about,
you sound like Bezos there. Answer the questions or you're not in.
Well, I mean, there's got to be some rules to it, right? I mean, I'm fairly lackadaisical anyway in terms of rule sort of management. But I mean, the policy is, look, you answer 4 questions and you're more or less in. I've got no opinion about your opinions. But what it is true to say is that you've got to know what Recruiting Brainfood is. You've got to subscribe to the newsletter. Tell me when you subscribe, then you're in. Anyway, with regards to that topic, it's quite interesting because Amazon obviously sort of using a lot of personal analytics to basically understand who's productive and not, even monitoring things like toilet break frequency and stuff like this. And basically assessing, look, this person's taking too long, too many breaks, frequency is too high, lack of productivity is gone. And obviously a lot of people feel strange about that. In my view, I'm thinking, okay, it's kind of, I can understand why. Being fired out by an algorithm is really discomforting. But at the same time, is it any better or worse to be fired by a human being? I mean, there could be, we often think that something is horrendous, but it might actually be an improvement on something that's already really bad, which is a biased human manager, So there could be a fairness argument, I think, made for Amazon there, but I'm probably a minority.
Maybe it's a move that Tengai will go into.
Well, I mean,
disciplinaries and performance.
And congratulations on Tengai, by the way, who won the Best Newcomer award in the Noras earlier this week. So the National Online Recruitment Awards ran by Stephen O'Donnell, your fellow Glaswegian, and Tengai won that award. So congratulations on Aileen and Charlotte and all the rest of the team there. fantastic to see the product. I've started to see the same arguments repeated, the criticisms of Tengai repeated in different communities now. So they're starting to get some traction, at least some mind share. So I think they're going to keep going far. Okay, cool.
Can we just quickly pause on that for 1 second?
Yep.
I was disappointed not to have made the Noras, but I was already away a couple of days this week and I couldn't be at it. But what was it they actually won? Because the National Online Recruitment Awards suggest that it's about online recruitment related things, and Tengai is not online.
That's
Tengai
very true.
Talks to you in person.
That's very true. I think the name probably needs to be updated because it's basically about technology. And the Noras was first launched, I guess, when online kind of was technology. And what's super interesting about Tengai is that I would describe them as an embodied voice product. There's lots of disembodied voice products, Alexa, Siri, that kind of thing. Very few products I've seen actually contain a body, and which is the disturbing thing. But I think it's just a natural progression from our use of voice as an interface. But in any case, they won that award, and congratulations to them. They'll get a shout out on Brainfood next week. Okay, what else is interesting, man?
I mean, I really love Reddit, and so I always enjoy reading articles that are about sourcing on Reddit, that kind of thing. And I enjoyed Recruited's report on here's how to do it.
Yep, amazing bit of work by these guys, and they actually have the full Bible put behind an email reg wall. Which I've got a policy on Brainfood not to promote content that's behind another registration wall. So I basically don't want to have to the subscribers to have to then fill out another email. But in this case, I made a bit of an exception because they sent me one of the chapters, which is how to do it on Reddit, just 20 pages. And I was so blown away by it. I thought, look, if these guys had the same thing for Instagram, GitHub, and all of these other kind of newish platforms, then people really should read it. Basically, Recruited, for people who don't know, they're a UK-based business, but they've got a number of different product lines, probably a little bit confusing for the market, but probably the most interesting thing they do is something called social sourcing, which is essentially a service where they will help you start conversations on these platforms to get people, if you like, hire ready, using your term, Adam. Like, one of the biggest problems in recruitment is that recruiters come in and sell too soon. Become interested in this job. Of course, no one is, and they bounce off and they tell you to do one. But what Recruited do, what they understand is that you need to be there long term and build credibility and build relationships with the people there to get them in a position where in future you might have an opportunity. So I think that's a really interesting experiment. Now, I wonder whether there is an outsource model there that could be interesting. So anybody want to check that out, check out Recruited. I think it's just with a D, isn't it? Recruited.com. Someone's shared that link in there. I don't have time right now. Anyway, what else was...
We should potentially consider doing a bit more about that, about Reddit, because I don't think enough recruiters know enough about it. But I think there's a potential to do a show which is about how to use Recruited and how to use Reddit and how to use Quora and things like that to get more candidates.
You missed the show when we actually did that because you were upgraded for that show. That was when you weren't there, and I got Aaron Matthews in from the US, who basically knows how to do it on Reddit. We had an entire show based on it, but I think maybe due for round 2 because it was about 6 months ago, and there's been lots more content shared since then. But absolutely, it's the 7th most popular website on the planet, I think, and there's tens of millions of people on it, including a lot of technical people. So
that's
it's
true. So as I was making the suggestion there was something in my mind going, show about Reddit? I think we've maybe done it. Okay, fine. Listen, Tweetbeaver has got to be one of the, that's a pretty cool name. I was interested to notice your caption on the newsletter, which was, Twitter's making a comeback. I don't think it's never had a dip. It's never had a dip in terms of number of people using it, in terms of number of amount of engagement. It's never gone down ever. Everybody thinks it went down. It didn't ever go down. What it didn't do was it hasn't grown. And the way that Instagram and things like TikTok and Pinterest has even been growing a lot faster, and Snap, of course, Twitter has looked like it's been shrinking. It never has.
Yeah.
But I think engagement has gone up recently, and they're doing some good things. Like, as you know, I like the fact that they're going no political adverts on it, and so Tweetbeaver may well be making a comeback because of that.
Yeah, well, the reason why I say I think Twitter's making a comeback, just in terms of relevance, I see that, especially with the politics going on, it's turned into a political broadcast tool, and also a news feed for news things. So I think a lot of people are using Twitter in a slightly new way. I see it as a little bit of a rebound, because at one point people were thinking, right, it was the darling. Then Instagram came over, Snap came over, and it became like, okay, not the most sexy thing ever. But I think it's rebounded in a bit of people seem to be using it more, and we're seeing the emergence of tools like Tweetbeaver that sit on top of it, and that's a sign of a healthy ecosystem, a healthy usage of the core platform. And Tweetbeaver seems to be just a bunch of tools which help you extract information from Twitter. So I think someone who's a technically minded sourcer might be interested in having a look at that. And you might get some good stuff. Recruiters probably still don't use a lot of Twitter, but certain pockets of candidates certainly do. So get in it if you want to recruit those folks.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So listen, there was a Medium article about the manager's schedule holding back the whole concept of remote working, and we've talked about that a lot on this show, but it's a big it's vital for the future of companies that they make remote working work. Here's what I've got. Some people who I know, they think that people who work from home are just skiving, or they're maybe putting their headset on and getting on with their ironing, or they're not really focusing on what they're meant to be doing. And then I know other people who absolutely believe that their teams are going to work, they're going to get more done when they can work from wherever they like. So yeah, managers' schedules holding remote work back is an issue that we haven't really talked about on here, and it's one that I'm glad to see is surfacing.
Yeah, that's a really good post. And by the way, I think there's probably a generational shift required before remote working is going to be adopted. I think the generation coming into management now probably have some experience themselves of working remote. And when they get into the remote sort of managerial responsibilities, I think they'll be much more comfortable with rolling that out to other people. But the manager schedule here was actually a really interesting post, because it was a kind of an exploration of the idea that the difference between a manager's schedule and a maker's schedule. So in other words, a manager's schedule is typically based on hourly chunks, based on how the calendar's arranged, and a manager will typically have hourly meetings or half-hourly meetings, but it's in that hourly cadence. And the argument here is that when you're doing remote work, oftentimes you're doing some deep work that requires 4 or 5 hours of solid, non-interrupt type of stuff. And one of the biggest challenges is managers need these updates or need these kind of hourly iterations or what have you, which causes a huge disruption for that deep work. So I think it's a really interesting read for anybody into organization culture, and definitely anybody interested in remote working, be you a manager or a remote worker yourself.
Yep. Okay.
Cool.
GitHub, is it called GitHub funders or GitHub?
Yeah.
Sponsors.
That's
GitHub
it.
sponsors.
That's
so very cool. Very cool. People are working on open source projects that other people are then going and just taking that code and making use of it. And GitHub have decided they're going to make it. It's voluntary in the way that you pay. You maybe give some money to Wikipedia or to The Guardian or something like that to read their articles. They're suggesting that you might want to fund people doing work that you appreciate.
It's basically Patreon on top of GitHub, which is massive when you think about it. Because essentially, I think where the devs go, everyone else is going to follow. We've learned from them on open source, we've learned from them on agile, we've learned from them in all of these types of business philosophies. But GitHub, prior to the launch of sponsors, was entirely free. So you had lots of people doing labor, high quality labor, hugely important projects sometimes, and not getting paid for it. But now they've created a way to be directly paid on their platform. So I think that could be a really interesting move in terms of the future of work, particularly how organizations operate. I mean, theoretically, it might be possible for a popular developer to operate without an employer or even without a contract not even as a freelancer. He or she could simply contribute to the open source community and be rewarded for it. So that could be a third category of work that is starting in tech, but probably will emerge in different places as well.
So to make that work, I think there's going to have to be some way of organizations being able to show that they contribute to this kind of projects, and others who just are take and don't contribute. They need to be shown that they are not part of it.
Increasingly, the companies that prevent employees from doing anything on GitHub, of which there are a few, some significant ones, I think, would prevent it for IP reasons and all the rest of it. But you can imagine if you maintain that policy, it becomes an increasingly big deterrent for a talented developer to sign a contract with you, because you're actually preventing him or her from earning additional revenue. And so you can see this actually having a significant impact in terms of companies' employer contracts, which is, typically trying to exclude other ways in which this person could make money.
Yeah, sure. And absolutely, I was making a slightly different point, which was that companies should be transparent around, like if I'm McDonald's, for example, I go and use a whole bunch of it, people's open source functionality through GitHub. There should be a way of me showing I am a contributor. So I pay people, I contribute, I sponsor people to do this.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, companies could get credit for that. I can totally believe it.
What I mean.
Yeah.
Okay. One more, which is big news in the world of events, I guess, which was that
right.
Bill Berman, our regular friend on here, Bill Berman, said he is announced he's no longer going to be running True, and he announced who is going to be looking after it, which is Jamie Leonard. So obviously Jamie knows how to do some pretty good events, including the biggest rock festival in recruitment, and so interesting to see what's going to happen. And all good luck to everybody.
It is good luck to everyone there, and we had them both on the show last week, and that's when they made the announcement. So fantastic to see at least the True events continue, because it's much loved and much needed actually, as a kind of an antidote to some of the corporate events that are out there. Okay, let's move on, man. We've got some interesting things to talk about, specifically about how technology is going to disrupt human labor, disrupt jobs. This is a topic that we haven't covered yet, but it's essential we do, because it's very clear, in my mind at least, that technology is going to have a deleterious impact on how many people are going to be employed. IBM came out with a comment recently to say 100% of jobs will be impacted, just depending on the degree that they're going to be impacted on. So before we bring on Rob and Yvette to help us with this, I wanted to just cover your thoughts on this, Adam. Are you generally a pessimist or an optimist or whatever? Lee Candiota said, yeah, it's already in transit. I totally agree with that. But what are your views, Adam?
Well, I mean, Lee's right, and of course it is. And quite frankly, I'm part of the issue. I'm running an automation technology product, and companies need less recruiters to be able to do more work. So, this trend is, already here. Jobs are going, jobs have gone, types of jobs have gone because of it. I am not sure exactly what they get replaced by. I know one very, very international bank headquartered in London who told me that they've got an active program of removing 25,000 jobs through automation right now. And of course, the upside is they are going to be creating new jobs, new technology jobs, 5,000 to replace the 25,000 that are going.
Yeah.
That's a net loss of 20,000 jobs in one company, and that's an active program that company has because they need to. They've got shareholders, and the CEO's only objective, really, apart from being ethical, is to increase shareholder value. So how do you do that?
That's their job. I mean, I don't even think even ethics is their job. I mean, it should be. But the reality of it is a CEO's job is to improve the bottom line. That's the only real measurement that he or she is required to deliver on. And if a CEO refuses to do that, you can absolutely bet your bottom dollar that person's going to be fired by the shareholders. It's not about...
It has to be. I mean, it has to be. So improving the bottom. So increasing shareholder value can happen without improving the bottom line, but it just needs to be linked to what's the company's strategy, and the strategy is about, wherever they need to be at a certain point and their position in the market and what they're trying to achieve. But
this is true, and CEOs are basically getting together to try and reset this obsession with capitalism. So we're seeing some movement back there, but at the same time, I think you can't get away from the fact these are profit-making entities, and that's what they're designed to do. So anyway,
one point, which is here's where I'm slightly less optimistic about things, or even further less optimistic about things. There's 2 million truck drivers in the USA. What we would call them lorry drivers in the UK. There's 2 million people there. They're not all going to retrain as data scientists.
Actually, there's more than 2 million. There's something like 17 million. It's the most popular job, I think, in multiple states in the US. So if there's no retraining opportunity there, you've got a lot of people who are typically, a truck driver is not 21 years old. They're 35, 45, 50 years old even. They're not in a great position. What is their next move, So big decisions that we as a society need to make. Anyway, Adam, stop talking because we've got more intelligent people have joined us, which is very important for this show. We've got Rob McCargow, Director of AI at PwC. Rob, great to see you here. And also Yvette Cameron. Yvette, we've never met, but I'm really pleased that we're able to interact here. Yvette's Principal Analyst at NextGen Insights, and before that, you've done a lot of work studying technology and the impact in the workplace. So thank you both very much for joining us and helping us talk through this a huge topic, which we're not going to cover, obviously, in the time we have, but we'd love to touch on some of these points to see whether we can get some answers here.
Great. Well, it's great to be here.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having us on, Hung.
No worries. Yvette, if I can go to you first. Adam has kind of already cited a relevant example, where you've got one type of job that's actually, there's a lot of people doing it, but it's right in the crosshairs of automation, right? We're seeing self-driving cars, we're seeing sort of drone delivery, we're seeing all of these happen, and I think it's very close where we can start seeing these jobs go. What is your perspective on how do these people kind of pivot from their current job, or what do we do?
Yeah, that's the big challenge for our industry. I mean, it was said earlier, we're losing jobs to automation. And I've got some feelings about how good that automation is under the covers. That can be a follow-on conversation. But the reality is, in retail, we're replacing, the front desk clerks with robotics slowly. We're doing it in fast food and restaurants where you're self-ordering and picking up. I mean, so those jobs are going away, and they're being pretty efficiently managed by the robotics and process automation. And not all of those people can be retrained to data scientists. Adam's right on that point. I honestly, I don't know what the answer is. I mean, there has to be a focus on learning. We know that there are new opportunities created with AI, but not everybody is ready to train the AI. Not everybody is ready to work with it, et cetera, and has those skills. But there are opportunities and new jobs that are created. At the same time, there are some really interesting discussions out in the marketplace now about, is there a universal, payment that we need to start looking at for individuals? I don't necessarily think that's the answer, but to be honest, Hung, I don't know what the answer is. There is going to be some segment of the workforce who simply is struggling when their jobs are eliminated and they're not able to be trained for what the needs are. I'm sure Rob's got some interesting opinions on this, but I'm concerned about some of the less served market here.
Rob,
Any views on that, Rob?
Yes, I mean, I think it's. I mean, first thing to say, there's been an absolute explosion of reports in the last 3 to 4 years trying to estimate, assess the impact of these. Maybe if I just very, very quickly speak to these. So the big first one was about 4 or 5 years ago. It was by Oxford University, the Frey and Osborne report that posited that maybe up to 47% of existing jobs could be susceptible to automation by the mid-2030s. The OECD figures suggest a lot lower, could be 14%. We did a study I can share on chat shortly, which said it could be 30%. I think I've kind of moved on from trying to guesstimate the precise amount, and I'm just going to settle on saying substantial change is going to come and substantial number of people's jobs will be displaced. I think, though, when we start peeling back some of the issues here, we start looking at, first of all, jobs aren't singular entities. They're made up by a whole different array of tasks, and different individual tasks are more susceptible than others. I think the other side of this equation, though, is I'm no economist, don't challenge me too much, but the sort of the macroeconomic equilibrium effect that happens here. So on the one hand, we see another report we did suggested that AI drives this substantial productivity boost, and it also drives down the costs of goods and services and allows these to be much more hyper-personalized. So you see this huge consumption boost as well. So overall, we think that by 2030, AI could add an additional $16 trillion to the world economy. So if you see this sizable economic boost, you also see goods and services lowering in price. We think it also drives with this a kind of a labor demand growth as well, and a reassembly and a reassortment of tasks to create different types of jobs. Now, I think there's a sector balance here. On the one hand, there's clearly a bigger range of susceptible tasks in industries such as manufacturing, retail, transportation, the trucking industry, as you were saying, Adam, before there as well. I think the number is 4 million in the US, by the way, but still a lot. I think on the other side, though, industries that include in particular education, healthcare, social care, that have quite a broad array of different dexterity requirements in terms of tasks are far harder to automate. So actually what we're saying is if we see this massive economic boost, and we see certain jobs being displaced more than others, we also see, in fact, growth in demand for certain types of jobs. And when you start pinning me down on specific new types of jobs, the only one I'm certain about is that AI struggles with British sarcasm. So I'll have a whole workforce of sarcasm explain this in the future. So it doesn't really solve everyone's problems. So I think for me that there is hope. It's not kind of the guaranteed robot apocalypse. You've got a massive divergence of viewpoints here. You know, you've got like the sort of tech solutionism approach, unleash this, it will solve all our problems in life. A good mate of mine is a guy called Callum Chase, whose book you should read. It's called The Economic Singularity. I'll share this afterwards. And he talks about a world that might see not just half the workforce technologically unemployed, but technological unemployable as well. And therefore, what do we do? And that brings us back round to this topic we discussed at the start, and it's on chat now, around universal basic income. And Hung, I've seen you talking about what Andrew Yang, the Democratic presidential candidate, is also starting to speak to in terms of a freedom dividend. So it's not as black and white, I think, as people are making out. I think there's a lot that we don't know yet that could happen.
Yeah, you know, I'm sorry, I'm gonna jump in on that. So I totally agree. And, you know, yes, there are specific job sectors that are impacted more than others. The job creation that we're talking about is on the upper, you know, mid to upper end of the scale. There are individuals today who, you know, are going to be adversely impacted. I mean, there's no doubt. And perhaps with the fueling of additional money into our labor market and the industry and the economy as a whole, that's brought about by the productivity gains that we receive through the use of artificial intelligence, new opportunities could come up that we can't even imagine. I think that's the joy of technology is it's not just about doing things differently. It's about doing entirely different things that we never thought were possible before. So it is absolutely true that some jobs that we can't even imagine will be created in the future. But at the end of the day, and for the next 10 years, I think that we really, the opportunities for, certain segments are pretty clear with the new opportunities with AI, but we cannot leave those who are, untrainable on the new technologies behind. We do have to consciously think about that segment as we're moving aggressively forward with AI.
Thank you for that, Yvette. On this, we've already seen some government policy pushback on tech-driven job displacement. And I just wanted to ask all you three what your view is of the government move. Well-meaning though it may be, but is it the right move? An example, for instance, wasn't it only this week where Uber was forced to pay 650 million in terms of employee benefits because one state had ruled that actually these people aren't independent contractors, you have to treat them employees. Now I see this as a government attempt to protect exactly the people that are vulnerable to tech disruption, but is it the right move to force companies to treat people as employees when you can argue the case that's not the case? Or as another example that we can anticipate, maybe a legislation where you ban automation. We can anticipate that might happen in certain situations where actually we have the technology to have a robot truck driving away, but no, you can't use it. You have to put a human being to drive that because we have to protect the job. Now, is that one of the solutions, do you think? Over to you, Rob, on this, if I can start with you.
Well, I fervently disagree in the concept of trying to protect jobs, because I don't think you can protect jobs. I think if you look at the previous 3 industrial revolutions, we've never been able to protect jobs. I think the difference this time, though, is allowing us to, whether it's government, in civil society, in business leadership, to take a conscious decision to protect people, not jobs. And I think with that in mind, I work a lot with politicians. We do a lot of national policy development work for governments. I think the problem this time is the speed and the pace at which this technological change is happening. In the previous 3, that we had more breathing space to enact policy at the right pace. And this is leaping on so swiftly that the adaptations to the education system are hard to bring about in time. We don't even know exactly what the landing zone is in 5, 10, 15 years' time in terms of the exact jobs we need to recruit and train for. And I think actually there's something about this that actually, Adam, what you were saying at the start before I came on about shareholder value, the duty of a CEO and the rest of that. And of course, I agree, that's what they survive and die by. However, I don't know if anyone else in the hiring field has noticed this, but we've seen a dramatic increase in, I guess, the demand in the best talent coming into our organization for alignment with the high sort of purpose-led and mission statements that a lot of companies spit out, and demanding that there's clear line of sight between what we're saying we're doing and what we do. And for example, we have people coming in wanting us to demonstrate how we're carbon neutral, how we're offsetting flights, how we've got a circular economy, how we're making a difference in society. And I think therefore that increasingly CEOs are thinking about not just profit and shareholder value, but increasingly positive impact on the societies they serve, which bestows a degree of competitive advantage. So I don't think it's as clear cut as automate these jobs, it saves us money. Because I think increasingly there's a demand for businesses to act much more responsibly and putting people first more than before.
Just to come in there and criticize you a little bit, Rob, so bear with me on this. But the people who are coming in to apply for your business at PwC, they're going to be like exactly the elite high demand people that probably are going to be immunized from automation. There's a massive class divide here. Basically, Lee Candy already mentioned it. AI is a driver for increased inequality, and I think we can probably see that. So let's assume that the people that are working with these highly skilled cognitive skills, they're going to be, I wouldn't say entirely okay, but we're going to be less affected, let's say, less impacted than people that are working routine, repetitive tasks that can clearly be done better by a machine or a bit of software. What do we do there? Governments, I totally agree with you. They're ill-equipped to try and legislate this away. You can't protect jobs. I think there's a great, you had a great line on that, Rob. But what do we do? Yvette, I don't want to have you kind of come up with solutions, but what kind of ideas have occurred in your work that you think actually maybe this is something we need to try and pilot or experiment with?
Yeah, the comment about government trying to control jobs and protect jobs, et cetera, I mean, that assumes that jobs and employers are the best answer for individuals. And it's interesting when you think about, more than 30% of the US workforce has done some freelancing work. And, the issue of Uber, and I won't comment on if that was, appropriate or not, but the reality is more and more individuals at all levels of work are finding that self-directed work, control over their environment and timing, etc., is super critical. I mean, that's why we're seeing the rise of things like daily pay applications, as opposed to being at the beholden of your employer on when you're going to actually get paid for the work you're doing. So, as we look to the future here, the government control is not the answer. I think that the answer is a greater focus on training and development, what's available to the consumer, what's available through various resources, employers included, but also putting more control into the hands of the individuals themselves on the data about, who I am. One of the examples I have is, if I am looking for a job, I've perhaps been displaced by tech, or I'm just looking to change my career. As I'm relying on the algorithms that we're using in our recruiting processes today, that algorithm is trying to match me against various jobs. What does that AI really know about me? It knows about whatever has been captured in that centralized database today, right? It knows that I've had these jobs, or I've brought in this educational degree, but it doesn't necessarily know about all the various freelance work that I've done or the learning I've taken on my own, because my profile, my digital profile, is spread out across so many different sites, and also much of the work that I've done perhaps isn't even captured in a digital system. So I think as we look at the future and the displacement of jobs caused by artificial intelligence, we also have to ask ourselves, how is artificial intelligence either helping or hindering our ability to get to the better jobs or the next jobs in my career? And I would posit that unless there is a way to bring all of that digital information together about me that I can control and that I can make sure is complete, I'm not going to be matched with the best jobs that really suit my particular capability. That's my number one driver right now, is how do we get a better picture and a handle on who we are, our digital identities, so that we are presented with better opportunities.
So I just want to ask a question. There's about 4 or 5 things I wanted to talk about there, but I'm just going to go to one of them, which is, Yvette, you just said, I don't think the government's the answer. I think we're all agreed that government is not the entire answer to all of this. However, you did say that training and development is, going to make a big impact on this. Why not start when people are 5 years old? So my kid is 5 years old. Why is he's learning maths, he's learning English, he's learning spelling and basic spelling and, sums. Why are they not forcing people to learn coding age 5? Why isn't it like the most important subject in the curriculum, age 5? And should it be? And that is a government opportunity.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and the focus on STEM investments, et cetera, is great, but it's still seen as an added opportunity as opposed to a core part of the curriculum, unless you're in, the more elite schools. So I agree, a greater focus. But I think part of the challenge is, funding and politics and inertia. There's a lot of reasons why we're probably not there. And it will take some time, and maybe it's bringing more statistics forward on the value, recognizing the impact of AI on job losses and the need to start training for it. But honestly, that question could have been asked 20, 30 years ago. Why aren't we putting a greater focus on mathematics, right? So that's a bigger challenge than we have in the next 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, what I am really excited about, though, is, on this idea of training, we also can't think about training and education in the same way that we have for the last 50 years. If you look at artificial intelligence and what's happening in the healthcare industry, right, it's bringing together great big data so that doctors and nurses and practitioners can be aided in their evaluation and treatment, surgery, all different levels of support in the healthcare field. And I asked myself, does the future really hold that doctors will have to spend 12 to 15 years in training? Or because of artificial intelligence, will we be able to bring that credentialing period down significantly, cut in half or more, so that we can actually put more doctors who are fully qualified in 5, 6, 7 years in the field treating more people with the addition of artificial intelligence? So my point here is training and education is important, but we have to rethink how we are approaching education. It's not about getting a 4, an 8-year or a 15-year credential from organizations anymore. We have to intersperse artificial intelligence in that and ask ourselves, how do we rethink those credentialing processes?
So that could apply to jobs like engineers. It could apply to jobs like accountants, lawyers. So it makes high-value jobs more accessible to more people.
Exactly.
And they'll be devalued in the market as a result of that, which is why you're actually getting a lot of the resistance is exactly coming from these enclosed groups. I mean, the credentialing period for any kind of profession is usually far longer than is necessary, because you can see there's an incentive to defend their market value by restricting the number of people that can actually do it. So I think there'll be vested interest we're going to walk right into when we're trying to apply this. It's going to be a very interesting political environment there.
Well, the message is that it is changing, right? Change will happen. It's not, if it's going to, it's when it's going to happen. And the same conversations are happening in the HR tech space on, should we let individuals own their own data? Should they be able to take it with them? And the mindset today is, well, we own that data. We own the proprietary assessment of individuals and their ranking, et cetera, within our databases. But the reality is, guys, it doesn't belong to the HR tech industry. It belongs to the individual. So pressure is coming from many sources, data privacy regulation, et cetera. And these mindsets have to change. And the same thing here on the credentialing process. Yes, we're making money today, and we make money by, issuing transcripts, and you pay for it each time, but that's going to change. Things are going to change due to legislation, due to individual consumer demand, et cetera. So there's a lot of change for the industry underway.
Can I just go back quickly to the subject? I don't think I'd like to cover it a little bit more. The subject of actually what Lee's put in the comments here, which is that AI is a driver for increased inequality. Something, Rob, that you specifically said. I think your firm has produced some research which shows, I think you said a 16 trillion boost to the global economy by 2030. What's the potential trickle-down effect? Because that sounds like a 16 trillion boost to tech companies, is what that sounds like to me. So how does that impact on how does the world benefit from that? You said something about the cost of goods and services maybe coming down. I don't quite see the link between those two things. I'm interested to understand that. So
I think the first thing to say is that there's absolutely a geographical variance here. We see China seeing substantial opportunity here. We think they see a 26% GDP boost by 2030. North America, we think, is about 14%. Here in Northern Europe, around about 10%. So put it in terms of the UK economy, that's an additional 230 billion pounds sterling of additional growth by 2030. So I think it's not just purely the tech companies that benefit from that. This is how this then transcends throughout different industry sectors and increased productivity in manufacturing, different factories, etc., different industries. But I think the point comes is that as this structure stands, there does suggest that it would continually be a concentration of wealth in the hands of the few. At the moment, we don't yet have the mechanism to ensure that the whole of society stands to benefit from this equitably. And I think this is why we've started seeing just the early precursors of some pushback. We're seeing clearly, Yvette, we're seeing a lot of work now happening around the challenges in Congress, haven't we, in terms of challenging the power base of the big tech companies, threatening to break them up, which may or may not happen. In the EU, absolutely renewed rigor there around the threat of taxation and a host of regulation coming in there as well. And I think
isn't that like when governments do this, it looks like children are throwing the toys out of the pram a little bit. I mean, if you're leveling a $5 billion fine to Google or whatever, all right, that seems like a great virtue signal, but it doesn't change the trend. It doesn't do anything fundamentally. It's just basically, it's like you're throwing sugar to the crowd. We need governments really to take a deeper and longer term view as to what these trends actually mean. You can't. The old saboteurs, you can't exactly break the machines down. It seems to me that's a crazy thing to even think about. You look at geographical competition, for instance. Probably, if you're China, the best thing that can happen to them is if you start breaking up Google and Facebook and all the rest of it. We're in a totally different type of world, and I think governments really have got a long way to go before they find the right path here.
Yeah, I've got
quick addition. Sorry, a quick addition to what Hung just said. Hung's preference is that Zuckerberg is like global emperor and runs everything, just so you know.
All I'm saying is I think he's got a degree of competence that outstrips most people that we would elect into public office. And actually, we've got a crisis with regards to types of people we're starting to elect into public office because the people you have in the White House, the person we've got in Downing Street, these are not qualified individuals, in my opinion. They're demagogues that are able to hustle up a crowd. And I just think, okay, we're starting to see that in Europe. A comedian is the president, is the prime minister in Ukraine. It's going crazy, folks. This is not, it doesn't seem to me that we can overly trust the politicians to get this right when we as the people are kind of putting in exactly the wrong kind of people into positions of power. So I'm looking for businesses to take some leadership here, and I'm looking for users to force businesses to do that. But I don't think we do it through the interface of government.
Well, and I see somebody posted in the chat here. I mean, so we're looking for businesses to take a leadership role, and we have situations just this week where Google announced their Project Nightingale and the partnership with Ascension, I think, Healthcare, where they're bringing in millions and millions of bits of data to analyze health information, ostensibly to drive better support for medical care. But the reality is they've brought in personal data on individuals and specific prescriptions. In general, I'm fine if the background of my conditions and treatment is loaded into some AI for learning and better recommendations. But why on earth would my name be associated with that? And why would somebody at Google have access to that? So, I agree that there is great innovation and opportunity for governments to play a bigger, or for companies to play a bigger role. But then I see those kinds of actions and think, wow, where is this country, where is this world going when my personal data is now, spread everywhere, and I never gave explicit authorization for that. So there's concern.
Guys, I'm just monitoring time, and I want to move on to one quick kind of the next point, which is we accept that tech is going to disrupt jobs, but what jobs and which demographics are most affected? Because we know that the distribution of the impact is going to be uneven.
Rob, what do you
truck driving, talk about retail, particular areas, are there particular segments that you think really they've had it? We've got to really rethink that entire part of the economy.
Well, yeah, I mean, so if we, I mean, there's so many assumptions and caveats you have to make in order to come up with these models, and we accept they're flawed, but you have to take a best guess. And just to reiterate the point, we think ones with a higher degree of distribution in tasks that are more repetitive and automatable tend to include retail, wholesale, manufacturing, and transportation. At the bottom end, healthcare, social care, education. And Lee's, by the way, has made some terrific points throughout this on the chat, so everyone should read what Lee's saying. But he's saying white and blue collar, and this is a point. Even our highly educated 270,000 people are disruptable, and I think they appreciate that. So this is no longer just a kind of a higher education, low education point of view. There's some interesting viewpoints, however, around gender, and therefore the distribution of males and females in the different sectors. So in some respects, one of the schools of thought is that women get disrupted sooner, quicker, but in the long run, in the long tail, men are more adversely affected. As you said, you've got your truckers, your factory operatives, etc. But as soon as you put this one forward, you'll then get another study coming out next week that will try to contradict that as well.
Well, hang on, Rob. The gender issue is really interesting to explore. why is that conclusion made? So you said women are going to be perhaps suffer shorter term immediate impact, but they'll survive it longer and better than men. Like, why is that? Because women are doing what jobs and men are doing what jobs?
Oh, nursing, social care, teaching,
Right.
in the main is one of the main reasons there at the moment.
So basically high touch human to human contact. A machine can't do that, or even if a machine could do it, maybe the person doesn't want a machine to do it.
Yeah. I mean, just one to conscious of time. The one point I wanted just to revisit, and it's something that had come up at the start, is something that Lee's made a great point about in the chat there as well, is, this kind of viewpoint that we should shift everybody to kind of engineering and coding and, STEM subjects. And I think, yes, we're hiring hundreds of these sort of people, and we absolutely will need them for some time to come. But increasingly, the pace at which the tech is happening has a far greater chance of augmenting and automating exactly those sorts of jobs. It's the far more serendipitously random social skills, human skills that are harder to disrupt. So I think there's a great, I'll dig it out afterwards as well. There's a World Economic Forum one that shows the skills that are most likely to incline in demand in the years to come. And it's like cognitive reasoning, it's creativity, it's leadership skills and those sort of things. So I'm conscious we shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater with this as well. I think increasingly human skills come to the fore in the years to come.
For you, Yvette, what are the jobs that you think are most robot proof, if I can use that terrible term?
I mean, again, the demographic analysis is well done by Rob and team, but really anything that is high human touch. So I think about, sales, the need for negotiation skills, the interpretation of data, etc. So I think those things where and in the service space, right, as was said in nursing, you can automate a lot of the evaluation and delivery of medicine, but there are things that you have to observe and communicate. So those communication skills, interpretation, analysis, and the finessing, that only humans can do, that we don't really think that even the super robotics, are going to be able to achieve. So there's a lot of still opportunity for us to grow and leverage AI to improve what we're doing today.
So if you're born a right-brained person, if you're born a natural right-brained person, it's not a hopeless future for you.
I don't think anything is a hopeless future for anybody, honestly.
I mean, just to provide a bit of meat in the bone there as well, Adam. I mean, if you look at where the tech stories have gone wrong, and I don't subscribe to Hung's viewpoint that giving it over to the tech leadership is the way forward. You could argue many of them are the reason why we're in this state in the first place.
Kind of a mischaracterization.
Exactly. Sure. Yeah, exactly.
Probably aligned with the views. I'll accept it.
If you look at now already the composition, look at the composition of my team already. It's not just engineers, data scientists, and PhDs and maths experts. I've got an HR person in my team. I've got a comms person in my team. I've got domain experts who ask the hard questions about should we be doing this, and I've got an ethics person in my team. So we work with philosophers. I even know people that work in arts and different sort of AI related fields as well. So it's not quite as homogeneously techie as you imagine it might be. No,
well, we're talking about we were 5 years ago we were talking about STEM's the future, and people are starting to talk about STEAM with the A in the middle being the artistic bit, because actually that really is needed. That's never going to not be needed.
Well, this is the Jack Ma view, isn't it? It's like we should teach the kids stuff that cannot be automated. There's no point actually in just churning out more coders, because guess what? Coding is also going to be automated. Exactly. Coding is literally a human being typing into a keyboard, generating a language that absolutely software can do better.
And at the end of the day, we have to keep our eyes, though, on the results of this artificial intelligence. We keep saying AI is going to replace jobs, but let's look at the outcomes of that AI. Is it delivering the right results, the right response? Somebody needs to look and monitor and ask, are we getting the right results? And that's a whole nother hour-long discussion, right? But that ability to evaluate and interpret and make the decisions on if what we're getting is right is key as we look at those jobs. There's going to be impact, but there's a lot of unexpected impact, I think, coming from greater use of AI.
Coming to the end of the show now, everyone. So I just wanted to ask our two guests a final word on this topic. There's going to be people watching and listening to this, probably in HR, probably in recruiting, and they're thinking, okay, I can see this wave coming. What do I need to do in order to prepare myself, my skill set to thrive in this AI and tech dominated world? What piece of advice would you give this person? They basically want to robot proof themselves. Yvette, if I can come to you first.
So I think first and foremost, be open and embrace the change, because change is here and it's going to continue to come. And keep your learning options open and current, right? So read, study, take new courses, train yourself, but also ask, right? Don't assume that, again, because something has been automated, you've been presented with a chat bot, that it's all accurate. Be inquisitive, be curious, keep learning.
Cool. Rob?
I'd absolutely agree with all that. And the great news is that knowledge is out there, easily accessible. It's follow our social media feeds, Hung and mine. It's always interesting stuff there. But case in point, my first career was as a recruiter, and I've managed to train myself in different directions, and it's worked out all right so far. But I still think that you've got empowerment in your career to take course and take action to future-proof yourself. Don't just wait it to happen to you. Take action.
Fantastic. Adam, I'm going to ask you as well. I mean, what's the one bit of advice you give to HR recruiter type person possibly listening, watching this show? How do they robot proof their future?
Yeah, and so it's almost the same as what Rob just said, except for I'm going to say it in more simple language. Don't fall behind when it comes to technology. I've got friends. I've got a group of about 10, 12 friends that I was at school with, and we're all in our 40s now and still good friends, and we get together. And I can see there's some people who barely know how to use their smartphone, and they can't really keep up with the conversation that some of the rest of us are having about other things. So just really, whatever field you're in, don't fall behind. You don't have to. I run a tech business. I'm not a technologist. I'm not a software engineer, but I know about the applications, and I know about how it impacts the world, and I know about what the opportunity is. Just never fall behind on how technology can be used and what are the trends.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm going to actually say one last thing as well on this, because it's worth to, I think, share. I reckon that you need to be hyper networked as a method of insulating yourself from this future. Don't put it all on yourself to try and learn everything you can. Of course you should, but you need to connect with other people quite aggressively. You can't passively do it. You have to think about building a massive and deep network of people, because you basically will need to increase your opportunity flow in this future where there's going to be this competition for those increasingly rare opportunities. Anyway, that's it for the show. We're bang on time. So I just want to say thank you very much, Rob McCargow, for joining us for it. It's been fantastic having you. And Yvette Cameron, brilliant to get your contributions here. I feel actually we should totally do a separate show with each of you, because you deserve to have more time on air. And Adam and I, we've got to stop chit-chatting to the level we did at the beginning. But anyway, thank you very much for joining us. It's been fantastic. Everyone on the chat stream and watching around on Facebook, thank you very much as well. Go ahead, Adam.
One really quick thing. I also want to thank Lee Candiotti for absolutely brilliant contributions all the way through this. Lee, you've been invited on. You're welcome on whenever you want. He doesn't want to come on, but
absolutely.
that contribution from Lee throughout this show has been excellent.
Absolutely, and I've just shared Lee's LinkedIn online as well. So if you want to connect with Lee, please do that. Lee's also very prominent in the Recruiting Brainfood Facebook group, by the way. So people who want to join that, please do so. And yeah, we'll be back next week. We've got a special show. We'll be talking Brexit because we're staring down the barrel of it. I've got Sarah Zilda as a special guest. She's a consultant and academic on this topic, and we'll be talking about how Brexit is going to impact us in recruitment and HR. Okay, everyone, thank you for your time. Enjoy your weekend.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Salam.
Bye.